presentation. Before starting today, the JDC West organization is taken map of land and monument. The University of Saskatchewan campus is located on Treaty 6 territory and traditional homeland of Métis. We give our respect First Nation and Métis in the center of this place, and reaffirm our relationship with one another. We pledge ourselves to create a competition that celebrates diversity, culture, and history of this land. And thank you to our judges. We have Matt here, we have Rod, and we have Kara. My name is Sahib, and I'm the academic auditor for this presentation. A competitor will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have 5 minutes for question and answers. Our academic timekeeper, Selena, will hold up a time cue throughout the presentation, the question, and the period. Judges will indicate their intent to ask questions through raising their hands, and I, presentation launcher, will call on them on their questions. Once the question period has concluded, the delegates will escort to leave the room. No question or comments will be permitted from the audience, and make sure your phones are silent. And you are free to present.
The COVID-19 pandemic has posed many problems to businesses throughout. The posing of restrictions to occupancy, who is required to work and who is not, the ultimate masking and choosing to mask or not, has changed the way businesses had to operate for many months. From those problems, let's fast forward to the future. What is that going to look like? How are you going to be able to recruit the people necessary for the workers that ultimately left your organization? How are you going to incentivize staying long term with the organization? And ultimately, what will be the plan going forward? And that's what we at Fast Forward Consulting are here to discuss for you. But before we go any further, I would just like to take this time to acknowledge that we are currently on Treaty 6 territory, and we pay our respects to the First Nations and the Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationships with one another. We recognize that we in the course of your studies, we will spend the time learning other traditions as well as the Métis homelands. From this, we have identified the primary problem for you Prairie Knights and how can you address the labor shortage and become a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable workforce. This is ultimately going to be a key factor in how you are going to be able to retain your workers, as well as how you're going to be recruiting your workforce going forward. This primary problem, we have identified a current state as Prairie Knights is recovering from the effects of the pandemic in relation to the workforce and is facing a labor shortage. Really, this is being felt all throughout the labor force, not just in the hospitality, but everywhere as well. From this the first problem we have identified is what recruitment avenues can Prairie Knights use? For this, we have implemented a recruitment plan, something that you can use to create a talent pool and how you're going to source people moving forward. Secondly, how should Prairie Knights recruit the people with criminal records? This has been a hot topic internally with your organization. How you have been screening out people with criminal record checks. How can this be changed, and how can these people be implemented in your organization, and how can they contribute going further? Finally, how can Prairie Knights reach a sustainable level of retention? For this, we've implemented a retention plan. We have noticed through the facts provided that there is people choosing an early retirement. These are people that are critical to your workforce moving forward. How can we retain them, incentivize the long-term employment, and how can we keep operations running fully? From this, through the implementations of our 3 strategies, we have identified a future state as Prairie Knights builds a diverse, inclusive, and equitable workforce and keeps the turnover at a sustainable level. We have used sustainable because ultimately some turnover is good. It brings in new ideas, new thought process of how everything is going on. We do not want to get turnover to a 0 level, but more something that is sustainable for the day-to-day operations. Before moving any further, we have made the ethical problem that we have identified is it ethical to not hire people with minor criminal records? Usually identified you provided is that you've been phasing out employees with a criminal record, merely not hiring because of that. There are certain charges that would be deemed to be a non-hireable charge, but ultimately there are some that would contribute to the business going forward. We have also made a general assumption is that you have kept employer records for internal, how long they've been there, positions they're in, performance, and whatnot. With that being said, I would like to invite my colleague Asba to go over some analysis points as well as the decision criteria we have chosen.
Thank you, Kyle. So, before we move into our recommendation or strategies for today, we have conducted some overall analysis for you today. The first point is that your entry-level positions, which are your lower-level positions, they are quite diverse, which means that you have that diverse talent pool to promote people and fill up those higher-level management positions and make those diverse and inclusive as well. Our my next point up here is that with the pandemic restrictions lifted, Prairie Nights now have become a popular tourist destination. People are now traveling back again, which means your hotel is back in the business. It was back in the business before at the pre-pandemic levels. The impact for that is that now you require higher quality and memorable. Now you require employees who can create that memorable and high quality experience for your guests to excel at customer service and who would help your business become more and more profitable going forward. We have also identified that with this influx of guests staying at Prairie Nights, there is a requirement or a necessity for a solid recruitment as well as a retention strategy that would ensure that you have that workforce required to meet all of those requirements and excel at your customer service and stay in the business profitability. The negative implications that can arise if these strategies are not implemented on time is that you would be losing your customers, you would be providing bad customer service. So it is very vital for your business to create those recruitment as well as retention strategies on time. So keeping that in mind, we have laid out 3 alternatives for you today. The first one being you would not be hiring any employee, any candidate who would have any sort of criminal records. Now, is that really equitable? No. Is it feasible for your company? It is. Is it sustainable in long term? Not really. You are not being fair to people. You would not be recognized as an equitable or a fair or an inclusive employer, which would be bad for your company in long term. Now, our second alternative for you today is hiring people from diverse backgrounds at the higher management level, which means that it would be feasible for your company. It would show you as equitable as well. But would it be fair for your employers who are at these entry level positions who have stayed with your company? Would it be fair for them to just that you just hire externally and not give them any learning or training opportunities and build up their careers with your company? And it would also not be sustainable in long term. Our third strategy, which is creating a strategic long-term recruitment and retention plan through our three strategies, which is creating a sustainable recruitment plan, updating some of your policies, as well as creating a strong retention plan to ensure that you have that workforce that stays for you for a longer time. It satisfies all the 3 criteria. It is feasible, it is equitable for your employees, it would represent your company as a fair, diverse, and inclusive employer, as well as it is sustainable for you in long term. So today we would be recommending our third alternative, which is creating a strategic long-term recruitment and retention plan. With that, I'd like to invite my colleague Megan up here, who would be discussing our strategy number 1, which is recruitment plan.
Thank you, Ms. So our first strategy is the recruitment plan. So what recruitment avenues can your company go down to really expand that talent pool? So first of all, let's start with some analysis. So right now, you've got a labor shortage of about 130 people that need positions that have vacancies in them throughout your 7 locations. This is causing burnout of your current staff. It's really having some harmful effects. And this is also causing turnover within your company. Your current staff are burnt out and tired and they can't do it any longer. So Prairie Nights needs to focus in on filling those vacancies within the organization is the top priority for this strategy. And so our recommendation is to explore new options to fill those vacancies. First things first, we want to really look at who is your ideal candidate right now. So we're looking at people who have great communication skills, problem-solving skills, experience in customer service, and as well as they're friendly to customers or people coming into your organization and really putting themselves out there. So this is going to open the talent pools to high school and university students, more looking at the part-time vacancies that can be filled, and then as well as international students who have a study permit. So we think that opening this talent pool up too would really benefit in filling those vacancies, either part-time, full-time, whatever we can make work. We also would like to see an offer to a scholarship or bursary program just to incentivize working at your company, why candidates can
move up in their current jobs within the company and also go to school at the same time and know that the company really supports them. And we'd also like to see some benefits offered. You could subsidize daycare, offer counseling, psychotherapy, anything along those lines. These are just some examples that we pulled. And so to execute this, where to find people is this next step. So we're looking at job fairs, university job fairs, or any type of where you can find candidates, as well as university offices make them aware that you're looking for international students or just students in general to try and fill the vacancies within your company. We also would like to advertise on social media, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, any really platform that you can really find those candidates that you need. And then at the very end, once you have some candidates, have an orientation training to really get these new people up to speed and understand that what's going on in your company as well as your values. And so to monitor this and evaluate it, we want to fill those vacancies right away with Prairie Nights. And so the cost, about the bursaries, it will take about, you can offer up to $1,500 for 10 students. Anywhere in this range we thought would be quite good to offer for tuition or anything like that. And then this in total could cost about $150,000, depending on the range that you offer. This will take about 4 to 5 months to fill these vacancies. And then for the long-term consideration, we would like to see you continue with these hiring practices throughout for the next year or 2 years. So now I'd like to invite my colleague Asba to talk about the second strategy.
Thank you, Megan. So our second strategy is focused on updating some of your current policies. Right now, you are not really hiring people who have any sort of criminal records, even the people who have some sort of a minor criminal record. And as per our research, it indicates that 4 million people in Canada have some sort of criminal records. The impact of that, you are missing out on a major opportunity. You are letting go of 4 million people for your company who could fill in those labor shortages. As well as you haven't updated your criminal record check policies in the past 18 years since 2005. So it is high time for your organization to update that policy right now and tap into that labor market of people who would have some sort of minor criminal record. So yeah, there is an opportunity to expand your talent pool here. So a recommendation for you today is to hire people who would have some sort of minor criminal record check. Now, we want to clearly indicate that you would be updating your policies and clearly define what the criteria is for the people who would have some sort of a minor criminal record, and and what kind of criminal records you would be excluding. You wouldn't be hiring people who would have created some sort of a major fraud. You would definitely be excluding those candidates. But if somebody has a really minor criminal record, you should be hiring those people. We also are recommending you to create partnerships with organizations who are working towards uplifting these people. They're providing counseling or psychotherapy to these people. They're helping them support to get their lives back on track, so you can build partnerships with those organizations and source candidates from there. So our plan for you is to first undertake your policy review so that you can update your CRC policy. The next step would be to create some research on what the CRC regulations and laws are within all 3 provinces that your hotels are located in. You would also be doing some sort of a research on what sort of organizations are working with these type of people and what programs are they providing to these type of people, and is there a potential for your company to build partnerships with such organizations and source candidates from there. And then finally, as I said earlier, you would be clearly laying out those criteria. How would you be executing this policy? How would you be executing this strategy? First, your HR person would be conducting some updates and will be taking them to the executives to get their approval on any policy updates that you would be making. Next step would be to conduct the meetings with those organizations that you were researching, negotiate a partnership with them, and you would be eventually sourcing candidates that can work for your company there. We have a recommended organization that you can potentially partner up with, which is located here in Saskatchewan, which is called the Elizabeth Fry Society. Our final step for this plan is to adopt the fair chance hiring framework, which is used in many organizations, and it is an effective model to assess those people who would have some sort of a minor criminal record. Now, it is really important to evaluate a plan to make sure that it is a successful plan and it is working for your organization. So the number of people that you hire who have a minor criminal record would indicate that you are becoming more inclusive, you are becoming an equitable employer. And the number of partnerships that you create with those organizations who are supporting these type of people would also indicate that you are in the direction of becoming more inclusive and more diverse and more equitable employer. And this strategy should take about 6 to 8 months to implement and would cost your organization about $5,000 to $7,000. With that, I would like to invite my colleague Kyle up here.
Thank you, Angela. Now that we've identified the talent pool that we ultimately hiring, how are we going to be able to retain them? The factor behind this is the pandemic has resulted in a mass layoff across the industry, especially in the hospitality. This is something seen with the hotels, medical care, retail, you name it. The detail behind this has resulted in 2/3 of the industry ultimately either retiring early or choosing a different field to transition into. Impact behind this is create a high demand for these experienced workers to ultimately get the business running to a sustainable level before pandemic, or a pandemic environment, creating that factor to continue to stay with the organization long term. For this, we have recommended to offer a deferred profit sharing plan, a DPSP, as an incentive for experienced workers to stay long term. So how is this ultimate plan going to work out? First of all, we're going to determine which workers are ultimately going to receive this DPSP for year one. This is ultimately going to be tailored to those people who are near retirement, that older, more experienced workers in your organization, incentivizing them to stay and ultimately not to leave to another organization. Secondly, we would like to see you partner with a financial institution. We have identified the potential of Sun Life Financial to administer these services for you. And finally, we're going to want to see them communicate to the employees of the services being offered. What exactly is a DPSP? What is it going to mean for you long term? And how are you going to benefit from this staying in your organization? How is this going to execute it? Well, first we need to consider why a DPSP. The uniqueness of the deferred profit sharing plan is the profits being paid to the employees is not being paid to them in the form of a cash sum, rather is being deposited in an account that is invested, and interest is earned on a cumulative basis. Employees do not have access to this account until they leave the organization in terms of termination or ultimate retirement. Secondly, we're going to look at internal employees' records to determine eligible candidates. Like I mentioned in our assumptions earlier, we have assumed that you have kept records of this, notating experience with your organization, tenure, seniority, typical hours worked in a calendar year. This is ultimately going to be the basis of the selection criteria. An hourly minimum for the year that they need to work in order to be eligible for this moving forward. And finally, after year one, we would like to see this plan extended to other employees, not just the ones that are 55 plus, the other full-time employees in the organization, and potentially these part-time employees. It is a stream for part-time employees to build up long-term incentives to stay with the organization, as well as potentially a short-term bonus. Like I said, they don't have access to this until they leave the organization. They work for you, say maybe 3 years, ultimately then they take the money out. They don't have access while they're currently working. And how is this going to be evaluated? We'd like to see semi-annual performance reviews, seeing how are they accepting this program, what changes are they being seen in the workplace, and what would they like being done moving forward? Is there more information sessions they would like to see, whatnot? And finally, these last two kind of go pair in pair, the mystery guests and the overall profitability. We would like to see the mystery guest being administered to see how the change to the stay has been made with the implementation of this. Is it memorable? Are you going to want to stay here again and again and again? And are you going to recommend this moving forward? And again, the overall profitability of this. Employees now have a piece of the pie in terms of the success moving forward. They now have a contributing factor of the sum that they are ultimately paid if they are ultimately near retirement or leaving. And it's just a factor to be accepted and want to stay moving long term. Overall time frame, we have assessed for this moving forward is around 1 to 2 months. This is mainly in terms of setting it up as well. We would like to see it fully being implemented by the end of year one, ultimately when the first distribution would be distributed or in correlation with your year end. Overall costs of around $15,000 to $20,000. This is mainly tailored towards the legal services required in negotiating terms with Sun Life. How are you going to roll it out in the future, as well as the potential mystery guest stays. Due to the restriction of time, I would like to outline one of the key risks that we have identified moving forward in not securing the partnerships for the services required. Ultimately, we have a way to mitigate that is to do it in-house and seek legal advice where needed. Ultimately, there is some policies that you can get the baseline scratched out and ultimately fine-tune it with professionals who have more experience with the policies surrounding the Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba legal policies, whatever they have going on in their jurisdictions. Some key performance indicators that we have identified that this is ultimately working and moving forward is we would like to see increased levels of retention of these experienced employees by the end of year two. You have identified that you would like a 2-year plan moving forward, so ultimately we would like to see this increased by the end of year two. With that, I would like to open the floor to any potential questions you may have.
1945 at the 4-minute and 30-second mark, and it's 15 off, so that means no more questions from the judges, and you'll have 30 seconds to reply. Time will start.
Include hiring any additional HR staff or leadership positions to implement this comprehensive recommendation?
So we believe that your organization is already having a good HR individual who is working towards updating your policies as well as is looking to expand into those diverse talent pools. So at the time, we don't see the need to recruit any external HR help. If you need more help, even our consulting firm would be happy to help you with any of your HR needs.
What thought went into the schedule behind the performance review being semi-annual?
The semi-annual is mainly in terms of having it at least 2 times a year, just mainly before or in the middle as how it's being started from start to middle, as well as from middle to end, how has the changes being talked about in the beginning, has it been done after the first review, and what is it accumulated in the final performance at the end of the year.
Curious about strategy number 3, the DPSP, the cost of $15,000 to $20,000. Is that for implementation, or is that the budget that you receive for this program?
No, the $15,000 to $20,000 was merely associated with the potential legal fees of fine-tuning the final terms of what it'll look like. Contracting out a law firm with experienced professionals with dealing with this, and just the litigation behind it was mainly the $15,000 to $20,000 potential cost.
Just piggyback on one of the other questions about the RSP offer performance reviews. You were presenting it in this section where you're talking about RSP contributions. Are those connected in any way?
It wasn't an RSP, it was a DPSP. DPSP would mainly be determined by seniority and ultimately years of service. As they stay with the organization a little bit further, ultimately they will be a bigger piece of the pot that they are being offered. Whatever the profits being able to be distributed, they would receive a little bit more than the people who are newer to the organization.
Thanks. I'm curious, are there other hotels, other companies in our industry that are following this approach? Is this a best practice? What's your view?
Right now, we're seeing a couple of hotels in the industry doing this as well, and it seems to be a great practice for them so far. So we would like to implement it with this. Thank you.
And address the burnout within our leadership and supervisory positions.
So it would be eventually taken care of because you are recruiting those entry-level positions and you are building that pool from which you would be able to promote to higher levels, as well as you can implement a job shadowing program that we can discuss at a later time that would take off some workload from your higher level management.
Through your ethical situation at the start of our session here, you identified some charges, or you spoke to there's some charges that are non-hirable. Speak a little bit more about what those would look like, what some of the examples you might have for us.
So one of the big ones we looked at, since you're looking for accounting positions right now, is probably large fraud. And right now, like, it wouldn't be super good for the company right now if we hired someone who had fraud charges against them for like a large amount. We just see that if you're hiring for a specific accounting position, that's one of the ones we would like to stay away from. Thank you.
Are any of the jurisdictions that Regina operates in more favorable to implementing strategy number 2?
I think so. Right now, there are some policies in place within within Manitoba, but not in Saskatchewan and Alberta. But you can be the initiator of something that would help you build a great reputation as a diverse and an inclusive employer.